In WALL-E, people in the future are fat and glued to their screens. In real life, people now are fat and glued to their screens. In Cinderella, Cinderella loves her glass slippers. In real life, Cinderella is rushed to the hospital. In Big Hero 6, blow-up dolls are loving. In real life, blow-up dolls are fun. In Alice in Wonderland, Alice is talking to a magic cat. In real life, Alice is tripping balls on acid. In Aladdin, it's a whole new world. In real life, it's the same damn ghetto. In Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a kiss brings the dead back to life. In real life, necrophilia is illegal. In Pinocchio, Geppetto is totally fulfilled now that Pinocchio has come to life. In real life, Geppetto would immediately begin work on a woman puppet. In Snow White, deer are a girl's best friends. In real life, deer are perverts. In The Little Mermaid, Prince Eric marries a 16-year-old girl. In real life, Prince Eric would be arrested for soliciting a minor. In Wreck-It Ralph, video game characters have a life outside of the game. In real life, video game players do not have a life outside of the game. In Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, birds are great listeners. In real life, birds will peck your eyes out. In Pinocchio, when a doll comes to life, he is a loving son. In real life, when a doll comes to life, he is a psycho killer. In Bambi, Thumper and Bambi are best friends. In real life, Thumper is delicious. In Frozen, Elsa uses her powers to protect Arendelle. In real life, Elsa primarily uses her powers to make ice cream. In The Little Mermaid, Ariel wears seashells as a bra. In real life, sea cops fit better than seashells. In The Hunchback of Notre Dame, perverts hang out at the church. In real life, perverts hang out at the church. In Finding Nemo, a fish travels to another continent to find his son. In real life, my fish doesn't even know when to stop eating. In Cars, cars can talk and drive themselves. In real life, Alexa, parking assist, automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning. In Aladdin, Jasmine falls for Aladdin even though he's poor. In real life, no money, no honey. In Beauty and the Beast, Belle falls in love with the Beast. In real life, Belle gets her face chewed off. In Ratatouille, rats make great food. In real life, rats make great food. In Winnie the Pooh, Tigger pounces on Rabbit. In real life, Tiger pounces on Rabbit. In Peter Pan, Captain Hook is obsessed with the teenager Peter Pan. In real life, Captain Hook would be a registered sex offender. In Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Snow White readily moves in with 7 strange men in the forest. In real life, Snow White would never be heard from again. In The Lion King, Pumbaa teaches Simba to eat bugs. In real life, Pumbaa no longer has a head. In Up, Carl Fredricksen takes his house to Paradise Falls. In real life, most people would just stay in a hotel when they go on vacation. In Aladdin, Jasmine has a 12-inch waist. In real life, Jasmine would be anorexic. In The Lion King, how the Lion King shows off his baby. In real life, how Michael Jackson shows off his baby. In Tangled, Rapunzel was cut off from human contact for most of her life. In real life, everyone was cut off from human contact during the pandemic. In Mulan, Mulan has to hide her sexuality in the army. In real life, don't ask, don't tell. In Cinderella, a pumpkin becomes a stagecoach. In real life, it's time to call an Uber. In The Little Mermaid, Ariel loses her voice and can't tell Prince Eric who she is. In real life,
I am the one who saved you. Send.
In Sleeping Beauty sleeps for years waiting for her prince. In real life, Sleeping Beauty would be in a coma and declared a vegetable. In The Little Mermaid, Prince Eric tries to help a mute girl because she can't talk. In real life, man tries to pick up a mute girl because she can't yell for help. In Inside Out, we know what to do by listening to the voices in our heads. In real life, people get locked up for listening to the voices in their heads. In Bolt, Bolt fights off killer armies. In real life, my dog runs from baby chicks.